Howdy youngins, Silver Mongoose here with another buyer's guide / review for you guys. Now, this very short buyer's guide / review is going to kind of be an extension of the Super Nintendo video and kind of an extension of the Game Boy video. So what happens when you take a Game Boy and you take away the screen, the battery light, the buttons, the speaker, the phone jack, the volume, the contrast, take away the slot there for the batteries, what do you get? Most of you are probably saying, you get nothing. There's no more Game Boy left. Well, what you actually get is a Super Game Boy. This actually contains all the inner workings of a normal Game Boy. It's not an emulator like the N64 transfer pack. Now what this is it is a cartridge for your Super Nintendo, and as you can see, it's a bit larger than your standard cart. And what you do is you take your Game Boy game here, slip it in, and then you can play it on your Super Nintendo on your TV. Now you can actually play it with all your Game Boy games, but some games, such as Donkey Kong here, if you can see right there beside my finger, there's something that says Super Game Boy Game Pack. And that means that the Super Game Boy will actually enhance the game. Now I have 3 games that have that. I have Donkey Kong, Kirby's Dream Land 2, and Donkey Kong Land 3. And it could mean that it adds extra colors, it could mean that it actually adds more sounds, it could mean that it has some sort of little bonus in there. A couple games I know do have bonuses. It could also mean that you can actually play 2-player on your Super Nintendo. There aren't a lot of games that do that. Some games you can, so you wouldn't need a link cable. There are also some games that don't show that. Mainly the Pokemon games, because they are an exception to every rule. They are special. They can do whatever they want. You can also actually play some Game Boy Color games on there. And you can play such as Pokemon Pinball, Zelda DX, Dragon Warrior 1 and 2. And usually these Game Boy Color games, which will be black and have the little notch in there, that's how you know if you can play them on there, you'll be able to play them on your regular Game Boy, so obviously you can play them on your Super Game Boy. You can also play Pokemon Gold and Silver. And these ones, the Game Boy Color games, almost always definitely have some sort of special feature, some sort of special border or something. This thing, whenever it came out in 1994, and it was about $60, which is a bit more expensive than some games at the time, but it did actually technically contain a Game Boy. There was also a Super Game Boy 2, which was released in Japan, but I don't have one of those, so I'm not going to talk about that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you guys all these games that I mentioned, just so you can see, just for a quick few seconds, the custom border. And there it is, the Super Game Boy. This is what you're going to see if you have a game which does not have the Super Game Boy Super Pack logo on it, like Super Mario Land here. So this is what will come up, and as you can see, there's already a custom color setting in there, one that comes with the game. And if you press the L and R at the same time, this menu will show up. And here you can change the colors, and there are 32 preset of these things here, but anytime you want, you can just press the X button and you will switch back to the original one. Here, if it has a smiley face, that is wherever it'll have a custom color. Some games won't actually let you change this, but most games will. Here you have the borders, so you can just go with the Game Boy one. You can have just black if you wanted. You can have something more pristine, or you can have something like this. Or here's where you can use a custom one that you can actually draw yourself. Here is where you can change the button type. Now here's an interesting bit here. This is where you can actually change the colors. As you see here, you can watch, I can change the color palette and make it custom to anything I want. And then up here, you can see the password. So you put that password in and you can always get your color back. So if you wanted to make, you know, everything black and red, there you go. Wow, I've never done that before. It's like a Virtual Boy. That's pretty awesome. I'll have to remember that one. So you can do that, and you can save it. But like I said, anytime you want, you can just switch back. So just press the X there, and you'll switch back. And here is where you can draw a custom border. If you wanted to, you can just, you know, or you can put your name up there, or, you know, I don't know. But it's possible anyways. So those are pretty much all the features of it. I think they're pretty awesome. And then anytime you just press L and R, and then you can just go back. Play it yourself. And I died. How embarrassing. Alright, so now I'm going to show you guys some of the games very quickly that have the custom borders with them. So you'll see what I mean, and the custom colors as well. Now this one's interesting, because you can hear the extra sounds. You can hear the clapping there. And if you start off the game, and you see it has custom colors in a border, you can hear like a wind effect, which isn't in there in the original game. I think this one's pretty neat too, because it has it so it looks like you're actually playing on a Donkey Kong arcade machine. And of course the Pokemons, and these borders you might have actually seen when playing your Pokemon Stadium on the Nintendo 64. And here are the Game Boy Color games. I think this one has just a great background. And though this one does have a boring background, it is pretty fun to play on the TV. Now this game, Dragon Warrior 1 and 2, is actually pretty interesting because each game has a couple different borders. And I'll just show you Dragon Warrior 1 here, very quickly. So you can see whenever you're inside the castle, you have like kind of a throne room background here. And when you go outside, there's actually a different background. And when you're inside the town, you actually have a very nice town background here. And Dragon Warrior 2 is pretty much the same, except for the background outside is a bit different and reflects the characters inside Dragon Warrior 2. So that's all the games that I have that work on the Super Game Boy with special enhancements. Alright guys, so there you have the Super Game Boy for your Super NES. Now if you are into picking one of these up, and it's great because if you don't want to play on a Game Boy, or if you don't even have a Game Boy but you still want to play, you know, Game Boy games on there, if you have an old copy of Pokemon lying around or something, it's actually kind of fun to play on the big screen. Bigger screen. Anything will be bigger than this little green thing there. So if you want to see some games, just check out my Game Boy review, and I'll talk about a bunch of good games, all of them which will be compatible with this. An interesting thing that I forgot to point out actually is if they do come with custom borders or colors, most of the time you can change them and add your own and things like that, so it doesn't restrict you in any way. So overall you can change the border, you can change the colors, the color palette, you can do, you know, your own border. So I think that this thing is pretty awesome. I had a lot of fun playing a lot of the Game Boy games on the screen, on the TV, and changing the colors up. I really like games that have their own custom borders. I think it's really awesome. So I think this thing is a must-have for any collector, or even if you're just somebody who likes playing Game Boy games but you just got tired of playing it on there. So this thing online will cost you about $5, $15, maybe 20 bucks. I wouldn't pay more than maybe $8 for it. $8, $10 is a pretty good deal. So you can pick one of these up, and I think you will not be disappointed. This has been Silver Mongoose. Remember, classic gaming never gets old.